Welcome in. Today we're diving deep into the heart of Malaysia's education system. We've got a stack of reports and research to unpack, and it's your collection, so let's jump right in.
Absolutely. We'll be exploring those successes, the challenges, and maybe uncover some potential paths to improvement for the Malaysian education system.
You've handed us excerpts from the World Bank's Malaysia Economic Monitor reports. Plus, we'll take a peek into the Asian Issue Journal.
It is a lot to digest.
But that's why we're here.
Exactly.
Think of us as your guides, cutting through the noise to help you really grasp what's going on in Malaysia's education system.
The complex dynamics within it, yeah.
Okay, so get this. Malaysia's basically achieved universal primary education, and early childhood education has really taken off.
Sounds great, right?
It does sound promising, but there is a catch. When you look at the data, it reveals a bit of a head scratcher. There's a gap between the time spent in school and the learning outcomes.
Yeah, it's like we're putting in the time, but what are we getting out of it?
Right.
It reminds me of that saying, time is a drug, you can spend it, but you can't buy it back.
Right.
The reports show that the average Malaysian student spends 12 and a half years, 12.5 years in school, but the learning outcomes are more like 8.9 years.
Yeah.
That's a big gap. And to put that in perspective, that's a wider gap than we see in places like Singapore and Korea.
Right.
Now, they have longer schooling durations, sure, but their learning efficiency is way higher.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting. Vietnam, a country with arguably fewer resources than Malaysia, is actually surpassing them in learning outcomes. They're packing in 10.7 years of learning into 12.9 years of school. So that really throws a wrench in the idea that simply by expanding access to education, it's a cure-all.
Right. It's not just about showing up. It's about, what are you doing when you're there?
Exactly.
What's the point of potential if you're not given the tools and the know how to use it?
It really underscores the idea that access doesn't automatically equal quality. And to understand this gap, we really need to dig into all those factors at play, and it all starts with those crucial early years.
Okay, so let's rewind to the beginning, to the foundation, early childhood education. That's where it all starts, right?
It does. And this is where the World Bank's deep dive into preschool education in Malaysia reveals a critical dilemma.
Okay.
So while preschool enrollment has skyrocketed to almost 90%,
Which is great on the surface.
a concerning number of kids are still starting primary school without those crucial school readiness skills.
Right, like they're showing up, but are they ready to learn?
And the gap widens even more when we look at socioeconomic factors.
Yeah.
Only 64% of children from the poorest quintile are hitting those readiness benchmarks, compared to a staggering 89% from the wealthiest quintile.
Yeah. It's a reminder that not everyone starts at the same place.
Right. Yeah. It's a clear reminder that those opportunities aren't always equal.
Yeah. Imagine starting school without knowing your colors or shapes or, how to, I don't know.
Those basic building blocks.
Yeah, well, basic building blocks. Sadly, for a lot of Malaysian kids, that's the reality.
It is.
And it's a stark reminder that opportunity isn't a given. It's something that we need to actively build.
And it's not just an individual obstacle either. This has a ripple effect through the entire system.
Right, because if you start behind,
You often stay behind.
you're playing catch up.
And this impacts, their overall learning journey and ultimately their future prospects.
Yeah, it has a long-term effect. So investing in quality early childhood education, particularly for disadvantaged communities, that's crucial.
Yes.
It's about giving these kids the fundamental tools they need to thrive.
Precisely. It's about leveling the playing field, about giving every child a fighting chance to reach their full potential, no matter their background.
I like that. So we've talked about the overall picture, but what's it actually like inside a Malaysian classroom? What do we know about the teachers?
Right.
What are they experiencing?
Well, it turns out our teachers are facing some tough realities.
Yeah, they're the backbone of the system.
They are. And while everyone agrees that Malaysian teachers are key to a better education system, they're carrying some heavy burdens.
It's true. I mean, it's like we're asking teachers to bake us a cake, but we're not giving them any of the ingredients they need.
Right.
The Malaysia Economic Monitor highlights heavy workloads, time spent on non-teaching tasks, and a system that doesn't seem to prioritize their professional development.
Mhm.
These are real issues.
And the reports show that Malaysian teachers are spending a whopping 8% more time on non-teaching duties compared to the OECD average.
Wow.
That's time they could be spending actually teaching, planning lessons, interacting with their students.
Yeah, that's a lot of extra work that has nothing to do with actually educating.
It's like asking a chef to spend most of their time doing inventory instead of cooking. It just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't. So it makes you wonder, how can we create a better environment for these educators?
Right.
One where they feel valued and supported,
Right.
fully equipped to actually do what they do best.
Because ultimately, they are the ones on the front lines.
They are. And one source, the Asian Issue Journal, actually points to other countries like Vietnam.
Okay.
They've got this really rigorous teacher evaluation and support system that seems to be working well for them.
Interesting.
And it makes me think that, are we doing enough to support our educators here?
Right, because it's one thing to evaluate, but are we actually then supporting teachers with targeted development opportunities?
Yeah, it's one thing to point out what's wrong, but are we giving them the tools to fix it, to improve?
It should be about continuous improvement and growth within the teaching profession.
Yeah. Instead of just, you're not doing this right, it's, hey, how can we help you do this better?
Exactly. And it's not just about Vietnam. The World Bank report also suggests that better structured lesson plans and the strategic use of EdTech can be game changers for supporting teachers.
Especially for like new teachers,
Yeah.
right? Or teachers who are dealing with classrooms that have a huge range of abilities.
Exactly.
Ad tech can be great when it's used the right way, not just thrown into the classroom.
It opens doors to personalized learning. It allows for, better progress tracking, and it connects teachers to this wealth of educational resources.
So much potential there.
So much potential.
It really feels like, we're talking about setting our teachers up for success.
Absolutely. And speaking of success, let's talk about how we actually measure it in education. It's not just about acing those exams, right?
Yeah. So how do we measure what really matters these days? Everyone's talking about those 21st century skills.
Exactly. It's about going beyond just rote memorization, those standardized tests, and really looking at what skills matter.
Right.
We're talking critical thinking, problem solving, being able to apply knowledge in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
That's where things like PIA, CPLM come in.
Okay. I know our listeners are pretty savvy, but could you give us a little rundown of what those are?
Sure. So we've got PISA, which is the Program for International Student Assessment. And then you've got CAPLM, the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics.
Catchy.
Yeah, they're really descriptive, but they both give us these amazing insights into how students are actually learning.
So it's not just, are they memorizing facts? It's,
Mhm.
can they use that information?
Exactly.
Can they apply it in different contexts?
And SCAPLM, that really zooms in on reading, writing, math, even global citizenship. It kind of gives us a broader picture of what's happening at the primary level.
It's like checking the gauges on a car to see, okay, are we hitting these benchmarks?
Are we where we need to be?
Are we ready to, navigate the road ahead?
And more importantly, is our system actually preparing students for the workforce, not just for exams?
Right. Okay. So what do those assessments tell us about Malaysian students? Where do they stand globally?
Well, it's kind of a mixed bag when we look at the data. While Malaysian students, they hold their own in certain areas, there are some trends that, that raise eyebrows. For instance, the 2019 SCA PLM data that showed that while the average Malaysian student performs adequately, there's a significant gap between the highest and lowest achievers.
So we're seeing a gap within the system itself, not just compared to other countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And often that gap is linked to socioeconomic background,
Of course.
which again highlights that challenge of educational inequity that we see popping up.
It's like we're saying, hey, everyone has access to the library, but some kids can only go during certain hours, or they can only check out, a certain number of books. It's not really the same for everyone.
Not a level playing field.
No. And then if we look at PISA as well, Malaysian primary schoolers, they actually outperform the regional average in reading. But as they reach secondary school, they tend to lag behind the OECD average.
Interesting.
So it's almost like those